choices America is making. But eventually, yes, I think the localized development of Islam in America will then influence other parts of the Muslim world.
Actually, I want to ask a question of these gentlemen. My reading has indicated to me that more of the liberal Muslim scholars and spokespeople are either in America or in the West. So if that's true, and they'll maybe help me with that, then the influence could be in that direction over time. Is that true? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to. Yeah, there are a lot of liberal scholars here too. There are a lot of liberal scholars in the Muslim world. Their voices oftentimes get drowned out or sort of heard. I think the interesting thing about the influence that American Islam may have is that American Islam is premised in many respects on these values that are very sort of core to the American experience, as I understand it. For instance, the idea of multiculturalism. I've traveled and lived across the world. We have a conception of multiculturalism in the United States that people envy around the world, right? I mean, we've been through a lot historically, right? I mean, it hasn't been an easy path to get to this notion of multiculturalism, but we've come to this path where we really have tried to appreciate different cultures, different ethnicities, religions around us, and that we take pride in it all being part of this American fabric. Likewise, certain freedoms of speech, etc., that we consider to be core to our nation. These ideas, I think, when you look at American Islam, are really, because Islam in America has grown up in America, and has grown up with people like myself, who, if CAIR mentioned that I was born here, sometimes I don't mention that in a crowd in Pennsylvania because I was born in Virginia. And I'm a Redskins fan, so that's from my wife, Philadelphia. But, it's grown up with us. And so the values that we picked up in our schools and growing up here, civics classes, etc., naturally inform how we understand our faith, etc. And I think the same thing ends up happening in the Muslim world in terms of the problems in the education system then influence sort of how Islam is understood, etc. The extent to which Islam from America can be exported, honestly speaking, I probably am less certain about it than maybe it. Mainly because, I've interacted with people who will say, from overseas and say, your Islam is diluted. You're diluting your Islam, right? Because it goes against some of the conventions that they're used to. I remember at one point studying in Syria, studying Arabic in Syria, and the common joke was that, the difference between Canadian, American, and British Muslims, right? All Western, right? But they would always say, you Americans, like if there is a woman who was bleeding on the street, the British Muslim, the pious British Muslim, would see her but just keep walking by because he didn't want to, mess up his modesty issues. The Canadian may see her and run for help. But you American Muslims, you would see her, you grab her, you put her on your shoulder, you run to the hospital, right? Now for them, the people who were telling me this, who were Puritans themselves, this was, you were breaking your modesty, everything else. But us Americans who were sitting there were thinking, what else would you do in that scenario, right? Not only as a human being, but as a Muslim, right? For us, that was a religious obligation to pick her up and take her to the hospital, right? And so, I think to some degree, these conceptions of American Islam, as maybe people are exposed to it, they begin to sort of understand it, you might see it being exported a little more. I know that in England, for instance, the most popular Muslim scholars in England are all American. And when I talk to them about it, they say it's because the young people there say, we don't have any who really make sense to us because they don't get our experience, or they're too puritanical, or stuck in their old countries, so we're looking to yours. And you can find that in Europe. I mean, there is the Islamic Center of NYU records its Friday sermons on podcasts and puts it on the web. And they have fans writing them from Austria and other parts of Europe who are young Muslims who are looking for this Islam which is very fluid within its local context, right? I mean, because when they hear those sermons, they're like, these kids are straight American, but they're also straight Muslim. And so, being a curtain for that. So I think, the question is complicated, and it's something which may occur, but it really depends on a lot of factors.
So David asked the question, and I think I really appreciate my answer, and I think I'm not contradicting myself. Because we already give you 3-4 examples of how American Muslim localization is already Facebook and Twitter affecting the rest of the world. So while I have said that, I'm really personally very hopeful. It's a faith thing, right? Because my own experience is so rooted in America. So, what, do I want to export my understanding of Islam? You bet, I do. Right? So, but I want to respond to David's question about, are there liberals versus conservatives in the Western world? One of the things that is really exciting, I think, is that those scholars who are in the West, and I would classify that as an example of a scholar, okay? And maybe he doesn't think that, but I bet in 10 years he'll emerge as a scholar. So this phenomenon that's emerging, what's important about it? What's important is that scholars of this strain are both rooted in the classical traditions of Islam, but they're also very rooted in Western philosophy, Western culture, mores. They understand the West. And this is very helpful. So Al-Azhar University, the current president of Al-Azhar University, has this English as a second language institute as part of Al-Azhar. It sounds very nondescript, but it isn't. It's a very important thing. If you read the students from Al-Azhar, which is the premier Muslim university in the world, they are learning about English as a second language. But much more importantly, they're interacting with Westerners. You take CAIR-Philadelphia, who is a professor of Islamic studies at Oxford, grew up in Switzerland. To me, he's a fantastic example of what is possible with Muslims in the West. He's deeply rooted in Islamic lore, culture, tradition, and scholarship. And he has a PhD in philosophy, Western philosophy, at the same time. So he's able to bridge, and that is the exciting part. He's able to bridge the vast gaps of differences that are there in the common. We need more of the folks like Tariq Ramadan and the emerging Tariq Ramadan, where we're sitting in front of, right? That I'm so hopeful. And that itself is part of the influence process. So part of what I'm saying is a hope that I have, is faith that I have. But the other part is driven by the fact that if I'm going to manage the Puritans within the Muslim tradition, either my voice moderates them or what? Their voice annihilates me. I am leaving that fast. Okay? So I want my voice to moderate those who are having.
I think one of the things that particularly progressive Americans stumble on when they try to understand Islam is Sharia law. It seems at face value, and I don't profess to have a very deep understanding of it, but it seems at face value to be at odds with certain American values. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about it where it fits in on that spectrum that you're talking about, both between globally and nationally.
Sure. So this is actually my area of expertise, so I could probably talk about this for a while, but I think there are a couple things with Sharia law that we have to understand. The first thing is Sharia law, the component that's often talked about, right? Let's just be frank. The component that's talked about, hand chopping, right? Lashes, death penalty, things like that, stoning. Okay. That is a very small component of what is criminal law within Islamic legal tradition. Sharia, technically speaking, Sharia really just refers to the two sources in Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah. And these are considered to have sort of a divine element. But every law that comes out of that, for the most part, is done by humans who do something which in Islamic tradition is known as fiqh, right? Which is Islamic jurisprudence. It's the interpretation of the sources. Anyone who's familiar with sort of Jewish tradition and other traditions as well, similar things are at play. So the Mishnah and the interpretation of the Torah, etc., rabbinical law, etc., occurs. And there's a fascinating relationship between rabbinical and Islamic law from the medieval times, etc. So Sharia itself, what we're talking about is, in terms of law, is a much broader category. When we talk about Sharia in a broad sense, right? That's all. Within Sharia law are things like anti-corruption laws, right? Within Sharia laws are things like, for instance, laws of engagement in war, right? Within Sharia law are etiquettes in terms of your interactions with other human beings. All of these things fall within Sharia law. The component of criminal law, which is technically a criminal law for punishment of certain acts, that are laws that existed in medieval times, but since then, if you look within Muslim countries, have been negotiated, have been debated. Is this really allowed? Is this not? I'll give you an example. I was involved with a project. There was a professor at Penn who had been hired by the UN to help the Maldives, the Republic of the Maldives, the series their islands in the Indian Ocean, work on their penal code, on their criminal code. Right? So we spent 2 years helping them with their system. And they said, listen, we want something that respects our indigenous law, Maldivian law, and its mores and culture, international norms, and has Sharia in it, right? Has Islamic law. So spent a long time sort of going through it. What we would do is we literally took the model penal code, which is the American model penal code. It's not instituted in every state, but it's there. We took it and we put it down and then basically started adding in Maldivian law into it wherever it fit. Now, there were areas that were problematic in Islamic law. Lashes, for instance. Right? How do we put in lashes in the system? Now, from our standpoint, we're like, okay, you guys, you want lashes in your system? Like, you can fit it in, but we're going to tell you where it conflicts with international norms. They were like, no, that's not an issue for us. We've already removed it from before. Okay, that's not an issue for us. Amnesty International already marks us as one of the best countries on this. We don't have it. Now, what I'm saying is Muslim countries are negotiating these things out. And the issues of stoning, etc., are issues for the state and the governing authority to discuss. The average Muslim, when the average Muslim is talking about Sharia in their lives, they're not talking about criminal law. They're talking about how they govern their daily lives in terms of what their requirements are to fast, what their requirements are to pray, what their requirements are in engagement with other people. So it's become a boogie word, right? Which, to tell you the truth, if we read American history, we have a tendency sometimes to do that, right? We pick up boogie words, right? The Red Scare, all those things. Now, the idea is it's become a boogie word, and I recently read a report, about the Sharia draft signed off by really big people, and it's really nonsensical. And